Welcome to this podcast created by Newcastle University Business School, or NUBS for short. The Oxford Dictionary states that the nub of something is the central or essential point of a situation or problem. So we hope that in this series we can help you to get to the nubs of it. This podcast series looks at a key theme of value, the value of our creative economy, the value of our student experience, the value of our research, the value of our collaborative networks. In this series, you will meet academics, alumni, students, graduates, and professional staff of Newcastle University Business School as they talk about what value means to them. In this episode, join your host, Ashleigh King, and special guest host, Olivia Jack, recent graduate of Newcastle University Business School, as they talk to Luke Myers and Stephanie Wilson, who are current students and recent graduates of Newcastle University Business School. In this episode, you'll hear about placements, the student experience, starting university, studying abroad, and any top tips for your student success. Hi Olivia, it's so great to have you with us in the studio.
Hi Ashleigh, yes, it's really great to be here. Nice to meet you and I'm really excited.
Yeah, so you're currently a student at Newcastle University Business School. What are you studying?
Yes, I've actually just finished my final year, so I was studying international business management with Spanish.
Wow, what a fabulous topic to be doing. And are you hoping to work in Spain or in, a Spanish country?
Yes. That's the plan. I couldn't do a year abroad, but I'd really like to go to Spain and practice my Spanish, maybe teach English to Spanish people, or like work in a business there.
I love that. And have you always had an interest in Spanish?
Well, that's quite an interesting story. So I didn't get to do it growing up. I never knew a word of Spanish, and I just decided to do it at beginner's level at university. So I just started from absolute scratch and went from there, really.
Wow. So I would imagine that some of your colleagues, some of your peers have done GCSE or A-level Spanish or had some experience of it already. So did you find any difficulty when you started university in how maybe other students had, the knowledge other students had?
Well, it was good because they split us up into the beginners and advanced. So, but some beginners had done GCSE or had some familiarity with Spanish. But for me, I just didn't know anything, and a large majority didn't know anything either. So we were all at a level playing field, and we could all learn from scratch and build our knowledge together. So that was really good.
I love that. How did you find the learning process? Did you have any methods that helped you to pick up your language easier? So did you play games, for instance, like Duolingo, or did you speak to other Spanish learners? Did you join a Spanish society? What were your methods for learning the language?
Yeah, well, I had done French for A-levels, so I had sort of a natural leniency towards languages, and I think that really helped me to pick it up. But what helped was sort of forming little study groups. We all had the same work out of a textbook. So we could all sit together and give that a go and practice Spanish. The university language library also offers classes for free. So I joined them and went to an extra weekly class as well as doing my course. So that really helped me. I didn't really use language learning apps, but people always said to me to watch Spanish TV programs or Spanish movies. And I'd never really done that when I was learning French, but I did it for this, and it was really helpful because you can have the subtitles on, and that is a really good technique because you're absorbing the language as you sort of watching a nice TV program.
Absolutely. I've got a favorite called High Seas, and it's all about, have you seen that?
I've seen that, but I haven't watched much of it, but I've definitely seen it.
Okay, so I always watch that in Spanish, and I listen with the subtitles,
Oh,
but I
right.
just prefer it so much to hear it in its original language. It's so nice to, like you say, learn in that way. And I think language is beautiful, and the fact that we can get to learn them and speak them with others is
Yes.
so wonderful.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'd like to ask, have you got any top tips for anyone who would be starting university? How can you prepare?
Well, it's a big change from studying in the past. So for me, being from the UK, I'd done A levels, and that was much more intense and more time with a teacher. So I think to prepare, you just get used to finding that motivation to sort of learn independently. Because that first semester when you first arrive is quite shocking to realize, like, oh, I've got all this spare time. Like, you might have 2 scheduled things on your timetable, but you've got to fill in the rest of the time with independent study. So just sort of get used to going and doing that, really.
I like that. And it's great as well to just making the time to learn, isn't it? And to meet people and immerse yourself in societies and just have the best time you can while there is that time to be at uni.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'd like to ask you, what is your number one word or your one word you would use to describe Newcastle University Business School?
Ooh, that's a really hard one. Number one word. I would say interesting, outstanding, motivating. Those 3 would probably come to mind, just because the school itself is a really great building and the facilities in there are fantastic, in the city centre as well. But also in terms of the course, you've got like such a wide range of modules to pick from, whatever interests you in business studies. If you prefer the finance side, you can choose more modules in that. Or for me, I preferred HR or marketing, and I really enjoyed those, which I didn't know what to expect before I arrived, and yeah, it really exceeded my expectations.
Excellent. I love to hear that it's exceeded your
Yeah.
expectations, and it's great that you're enjoying your course.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for your time in the studio today.
Thank you. Hi, Luke. Welcome to the Business School podcast.
Hi there, nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. So we're going to talk today about your student experience here at Newcastle University Business School. So the first question that I want to ask you is, what are you studying?
I'm studying a master's in international business management.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So what made you choose to study this course at Newcastle?
I'd always been quite curious about business. I always remember watching Dragon's Den on the TV and being like, I want to be like that one day. And then through doing my undergraduate degree, I'd been applying to grad schemes and things like consultancy, but then actually didn't really know much about business.
Yeah.
Which is kind of not very good when you're applying to such schemes. So I decided that I wanted to know more about it. I had this curiosity and I had this interest in this particular career path. So why not study a master's in it? And I had basically, because of the COVID situation, I'd had difficulties with my job. And then I decided this is the perfect time, make the most of the opportunity. And it just, everything came together. And I decided to study here in Newcastle, yes.
That sounds great. It seems like it was definitely meant to be for you to come to the business school.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason, I believe.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So when you first arrived in Newcastle and started your course, can you tell us a little bit about what that was like for you? How did you find the change from undergraduate studies to postgraduate studies?
Yeah, so I'm a Newcastle local, so this is, this place is where I was born and bred.
Yeah.
In terms of the transition, I think it is something that you have to manage. I always say this, that the workload is manageable, but it is something that is manageable. It has to be something that you have to be proactively working on. Because if you think about it, I did a language as my undergraduate subject.
Right.
So you are taking on a whole new subject in the course of a year, and that requires you to put in the work, right? And even though there is structure as a postgraduate student, it is a lot more reliant on you actually taking the initiative and putting in the extra steps. So it's no longer just a case of just turning up to lectures and seminars and just quote unquote winging it, or just doing the required readings and being like, that's enough. I've read this one textbook with all the answers. It's actually about doing the additional reading and think, okay, I find this particular thing interesting. So for example, I'm fascinated about East Asia and East Asian business. So sometimes I would take that and I would do some additional reading surrounding that, or a particular company in China or in South Korea, or, and actually apply it to what we've been learning. I think those are the things that you need to pick up when you're a postgraduate student.
Yes, it sounds very much like, even though undergraduate, you've picked something that you're passionate about, it's perhaps even more so at postgraduate, because it sparks your curiosity and you can then go off and find out more about that particular passion.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of the structure of your studies, can you describe a little bit about how like a day in the life or week in the life of Luke?
Yeah. So each semester is made up of about six modules, I'd say. And as part of that, you have your lectures and your seminars that you attend. But for each module, you really need to dedicate about 2 or 3 hours a week to that subject in terms of additional reading. So my typical day would be, there would typically be a lecture or a seminar each day. And then outside of that, I would probably do about 4 or 5 hours of additional work. So be it reading, or sometimes the lecturer might post some post-lecture questions or pre-seminar questions. So preparing in that way. And then outside of that, making sure to make time for some, free time as well. Treat the postgraduate like it is a full-time job. But of course, you have to have time to, some downtime to relax. So for example, I really love swimming. So that's what I do to kind of de-stress. And I also have a part-time job as well. So that's it's not really a way of relaxing, but it's a way of distracting yourself from the study sometimes. So that's a typical day, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you think that coming to Newcastle, having that amazing business school to attend your lectures and seminars, the really good library, the facilities, and then Newcastle itself, have you found it, as I know you're from here, but could you tell people who might not have been here before, what is so great about Newcastle as a student city? The university has over 28,000 students from 140 countries, giving a truly international experience.
I think the thing that I hear most I have a lot of international friends and friends from different places in the UK, and the first thing they always mention is how friendly the locals are, which obviously I may be biased, but I think we're great.
Yeah, me too.
So really friendly people, and it's a very compact city, but in a good way, in that it's very easy to find your way around. Sometimes you can get lost in big cities and it takes ages for you to find your feet. I mean, I used to live in China. I used to live in a city of 8 million people. So,
wow.
that took some time to get used to. But the thing is about Newcastle is that everything is within walking distance, really. We have an amazing metro service, and we have buses to connect you with places. I live in Tynemouth, so I'm able to commute between Tynemouth on the coast. So it's about 20 minutes on the metro into Newcastle. Very well connected. But if you live in the centre of Newcastle, everything is within reach. It's very convenient to get around. And it's just great. There's lots of fun social things to do. And it's affordable for students. I think it was ranked first in terms of affordability for student cities. And there is a lot of students in Newcastle.
Yes.
In a good way, in that you are in good company.
Great. So Luke, I hear that you did a year abroad, and I feel like it would be amazing if you could tell everyone about your experience, where you went, what you did when you were there, and any top tips for people who would like to do one as well.
Yeah, so I actually did a year abroad in Hangzhou, China. I was studying as an exchange student at Zhejiang University, and I was doing the Chinese language and culture program. So basically that consisted of lessons in Chinese, where we would study the language, but it would also include cultural activities that were arranged through the university. And it was honestly one of the best experiences of my life, if not the most nerve-wracking. I'd never been further away than Spain on holiday with my family.
Wow.
So then traveling to the other side of the world to study was terrifying at first, but it was so exciting. And it was something that I'd dreamed of doing for so long. And just meeting people again from all around the world. I had classmates from Korea, from Germany, from Japan. And it was not only just about learning about China and Chinese culture and language and living in that kind of environment, but just meeting people with such unique insights, which was fascinating too.
Yes, that sounds incredible. So if someone's listening and they're thinking, wow, I'd really like to do that as well. I'd like to go to China, which is obviously incredibly adventurous. They might think I'd like to go whichever language they're interested in, they might want to go to that country.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you arrived, and speaking towards your experience there, what would be sort of any top tips you would give to prospective students studying abroad?
Yeah, I would say kind of just go with it. And I know that sounds a bit vague, but you will get culture shock. And I think that is inevitable when you move to a new country, especially, being from the UK and moving to China. It's undeniable that it's, the cultures are polar opposites, really. But you really just need to get involved as much as you can and just, go with it, embrace it, because it is the opportunity of a lifetime. People would love to have that opportunity, and you have the chance to really make the most of it. So especially if you're going there with the purpose of learning a language, there really is no better, you can buy all the books and you can buy, all the programs and courses online, but
Yes.
nothing really compares to actually being in the country and actively using it with the people. That's really the purpose of learning a language, isn't it? So the best way to do that is just to immerse yourself in that culture, in that society, and get involved. So as I mentioned before, I love swimming. And I used to go to a swimming pool that was close to the university campus, and I would just talk to people that I was swimming in the lanes with, and just like saying, "Oh, I'd only been learning Chinese then for about a year, but I was just like, oh, my name's this, I'm from England," and whether they were listening or not, I don't know, but
Just
I was
getting
just
the
talking
practice.
people's ears off in Chinese, and it was experiences like that's really what you remember, And when I was out there, I had the opportunity to travel all around China, sometimes with my friends that I made, sometimes by myself. I traveled to places like Hong Kong, Seoul, Taipei, and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that if it wasn't for study abroad. So it really is something that is so special to me. And if you have the opportunity, I would just say go for it. You only live once, as the cliche goes. But it is true to the extent that you really need to just take every opportunity that you have, I would say.
So would you encourage everyone who has an interest to take the plunge and go and study abroad?
If you are inquisitive at all about learning about other people, how they live, their culture, their language, then it seems like the perfect way to do it. And you get to meet so many fascinating people with interesting stories like yourself. And yeah, I would definitely recommend it, for sure.
Brilliant. So just as a sort of wrap-up question, I wanted to ask you if you could sort of sum up the business school, Newcastle University Business School, in one word. I know that's quite challenging.
Yeah.
What would you pick and why?
Diverse, I think. If we're talking about the business school in terms of the people that I've met, diverse. Whether you're in lectures or seminars, you will be with people from all four corners of the earth. And you will meet people and make friends with people from different countries with different backgrounds, and from someone who is doing international business management where you didn't have to study it before. You meet people who've done different courses before, different subjects. And that really makes an interesting experience because you have such a wide variety of different perspectives and things like that. And, it may just be a 1-year course, but you do make really close friends.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a really, really worthwhile experience.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Luke, for telling us all about your student experience here at Newcastle University Business School.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, Steph. Welcome to the Business School podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem. So the first question that I'd like to ask you is, what is your course?
So my course is marketing. I did marketing with a placement, so year in industry, and I recently graduated, so I've just finished that degree now.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
So that was an undergraduate degree?
It was, yeah. It
Great.
was, just marketing with placement.
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to ask you is about your placement, because that's really interesting to have that opportunity. So where was your placement, and what did you find out about yourself and about business while you were on placement?
So my placement was with McDonald's global franchising. So I was working in Shoreditch in London in like a satellite office for the main headquarters of McDonald's. So I was working in the global digital product management team, doing things like managing the self-service kiosks that you would find in McDonald's restaurants and the McDonald's app across the world as well. So it wasn't necessarily a marketing related role. And I think that's something that I found really interesting, kind of stepping out of the kind of marketing side of business and trying something completely new. I loved it, and I think I learned a lot about myself in terms of how I like to work in teams and how I like to communicate on a more kind of corporate level. But also it kind of made me realize that marketing wasn't the only route to go down. It was really amazing to explore those different kind of disciplines. But I think I stepped away from it realizing that potentially working full-time in an office and doing corporate work wasn't necessarily where I wanted to go with my career. So that was a really important learning curve. And I think if I'd chosen to just do my 3-year marketing course without the year in industry, I wouldn't necessarily have come to that realization so early on.
Yes. Oh, wow. That sounds like you've found out so much about your interests and what you want to pursue as a career.
Yeah.
So if you were going to give a student like a top tip about doing a placement, because it would be quite nerve-wracking on your first day as a student who's only learnt about this in the classroom or through lectures or through reading, and now suddenly you're plunged into like this business environment. So what was that like when you first started, and what would a top tip be?
So yeah, you're so right. Like there's such a difference between sitting in a lecture and learning about marketing or about business and then being thrown into a real business and actually having to apply what you've learned and be a professional. I think my top tip would be just that, to really throw yourself in and embrace all aspects of the experience. So it's very easy to think of it as just a job and just focus on your role in the company. But in reality, when you do the placement, there's so many people to meet. You've got to do networking, you've got to do like professional practices, things like even just turning up to the office 9 to 5 is very different from being a student and kind of having your lecture timetable and being able to do what you want in between lectures. So I'd say very much throw yourself into it and get the most out of the experience as possible. Go to every office party, meet everyone you're working with, and try and leave a really good impression. I think the best thing about being in a placement opportunity is that you get to leave your mark on that company and, fingers crossed, end up with an opportunity to go back once you finish your degree if possible. And I'd say just really take the opportunity to get everything you can out of that placement and really put your all into it, because that's how you're going to get sort of like the most beneficial experience from that year in industry.
Student life at Newcastle is about so much more than just a fantastic education. You'll meet people from around the world, forge lasting friendships, seek out life-changing experiences, and create memories for life. Great. So when you came back to being a student after your year in industry for your final year, how do you think that year in industry impacted your ability to study, your ability to do a dissertation? Do you think it had a positive impact on because you'd had this real world experience of business, do you think you could channel that into your studies?
Oh my gosh, yeah, 100%. I think obviously the circumstances were rather different when I came back from my placement compared to before I went on it. But regardless of that, having that year in industry really, really improved my professional communication skills, my teamwork skills, my productivity and work ethic and organisation was completely transformed by doing a placement as well. I think the pressure of working for a big company like McDonald's really made me kind of kick my productivity into gear and learn how to work efficiently and effectively, so that when I came back to do my final year, I knew how to sit down at a desk and really focus on something, or to write an email in a professional manner and communicate with people in a way that means that everyone's on the same page and are all working hard. And In terms of a dissertation, I actually opted to do a marketing consultancy project instead of a dissertation,
Oh,
which
wow.
meant that it was worth the same credits. But basically what I was doing was working with a team of 5 other students on a real life business. So I was working with a client that the business school had put us in touch with on a marketing project, and we designed a marketing solution for a local business. And I think if I hadn't done my placement, I would have lacked the professional communication skills to work with that live client that we got in our consultancy project. And also I was the team leader in my marketing consultancy group. So having the chance to work in a team on my placement and be in that professional high pressure environment where you're actually having to work hard to achieve results for a real business meant that when it came to doing my consultancy project, I felt so much more comfortable in that position. I was confident in my own abilities to make the project a success.
Yeah, it sounds like your placement filled you with that confidence and like self-belief that you could really apply what you'd learned working for McDonald's to the business school. So this marketing consultancy project sounds really interesting and something quite unusual and unique to Newcastle University Business School. What made you decide to choose that rather than a dissertation, which is sort of like a rite of passage as a student writing a really long 10,000 word dissertation? So what made you think that the consultancy project was more beneficial to you?
Yeah, I think you're so right. I was so pleased that I got the choice and that I wasn't almost channeled into this kind of standard route where you have to write a dissertation. And that's something I really appreciate from the business school, and the support I got throughout that project from the school was outstanding. But at the end of the day, I'm a very practical learner and I love doing things and seeing the outcomes of my work. So for me, the idea of actually providing a marketing solution for a local business and seeing how that business benefits from the work that I've put in is super rewarding. And I feel like it would be really rewarding to hand in a dissertation and write that 10,000 words. But once you've handed it in, it's done. Whereas to this day, I can go on the social media of this business that we worked for and see that they're putting the marketing recommendations that I came up with into play, and that the strategies that me and my team on this project developed are now adding value to this local business. And I think that's something that's so exciting. And there was also very much an aspect of creativity and design within this project. So we were working for a local wine company called Laneberg Wine, and we got to do things like design new packaging and new branding for this business. And I love doing stuff that involves like colours and graphics, and we were working on Canva to produce a really big document for the client, giving them all our marketing recommendations. And it just seemed like so much more of a diverse and kind of practical action-based project than a dissertation would have been. So that's why I chose it.
Brilliant. And it sounds like that there's something for everyone. So if you feel like you'd rather work independently and write 10,000 words, or if you'd rather work in a team and do something more creative, there's something for everyone at the business school.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else I love about the business school is it's so diverse in terms of the people who are there. Even within my marketing consultancy group, there was only 6 of us. There was one person from America, one person from Japan, one person from Canada, I think he was. So even when we were on these Zoom calls discussing our project, everyone's coming at the project from a completely different cultural perspective and a completely different background, which meant that the ideas that were flowing within our team and the project that resulted from it was so incredibly varied and so unique to the different kind of perspectives of everyone in the team. And I found that even in lectures and seminars in the business school, because there's such a diverse range of people from such a diverse range of places, you have conversations with people who can show you a completely different side to things. And that's why it's so interesting and such a good place to learn.
Yes. So if you could sum up your experience of Newcastle University Business School in one word, what would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good question. I think if I could sum up my university experience at the business school in one word, it would be immersive, because I feel like everything from the lectures to the projects and the group work and my placement, it all applies to wider business, and you feel like you're so involved in it. Like it's not just learning a theory or having some information spouted at you. My whole experience at the business school has been so multidimensional and had so many different practical and kind of applicable aspects to it, that I feel like I've come out of the business school such a more well-rounded and experienced person. I haven't just like read a few textbooks or sat a few exams. It's like my experience here has really kind of been so, yeah, as I say, immersive. That's kind of what it would be.
Great. Thank you, Steph.
Thank you for having me. It's been really good to talk to you.
Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your feedback. You can drop us a line at nubspodcast@newcastle.ac.uk. And you can also tag us in any of our Newcastle University Business School social media channels. You can find these links in our show notes. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. This podcast has been brought to you by Newcastle University Business School. Your hosts have been Ashleigh King and Olivia Jack, with executive production by Ashleigh King, photography by Paul Scorer of That Branding Company and Blind Sea Photo, production by Alice Smith and Tim Lazinski at TL Multimedia Limited.